Welcome to Empowered to Grow, the podcast. I am your host, Hanan El-Basha. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Empowered to Grow in Business podcast. This is your host, Hanan El-Basha. As always, I'm super excited to be having these conversations. I feel blessed and really privileged to meet amazing people along my journey in life, and for them to have a lot to say. And I'm like, please come on the podcast and let's share it with the world. And I think this is the case with Michaela Reaney, who we're meeting today and who has graciously accepted my invite. Hi, Michaela.
Hi, Hanan. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for being on Empowered to Grow.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. And it's just so wonderful that a brilliant friend of ours brought us both together. So
Exactly.
How fabulous.
Shout out to Dr. Rana Savra. Rana, thank you. Thank you for the connection. Absolutely. We have to let you know. We didn't let you know that we're going live, but now you're going to know that we're going live. So, Michaela, let's start with who you are and what you do so everyone knows what you're doing.
Of course. So I've spent probably, I think it's about we're in 2025 now, so it must be about 16 years in the learning and development space. So that's both leading global teams in corporates and in SMEs as an employee, but also in my own businesses as well. So I've started and scaled 3 companies. With mixed success, I'll be really honest with you. So I've sold one of those businesses. I had to close a business, which was really, really brutal. And we can maybe talk about some of that in today's session about the leadership and the human skills needed to try and navigate that whole world. And I've spent that time really understanding, researching, delivering, working with over 10,000 leaders now. Across lots of different spaces, from startups to scaling companies to larger corporations. And I'm obsessed with human skills because for me, I believe we should be developing human skills with the same rigor that we do our technical and our digital skills. So for anyone listening, what I mean by human skills is you may have heard the word, which I really don't like, which is soft skills.
Because I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it really undervalues, I think, the sheer power of our ability as humans to connect with each other, to communicate effectively, to be demonstrating those behaviors that really make a team or an organization successful. So for those last years, I've been in this space, designing, delivering learning programs with my team, not just on my own. And it all comes back to culture and how, as you as a leader, how you're going to show up. And for me, leadership just isn't about being a certain level in an organization. I think actually we're all leaders and contributors in our community, in our society as well. So these skills are the kind of foundations, the fundamental human stuff that makes the world an inclusive, successful, high-performing place.
And I love that you've mentioned the kind of the soft skills part, because I worked in corporate about 12 years before going into private business and stuff. And I got a lot of trainings in technical skills, strategy, marketing, those kind of things. Soft skills were very, very rare, or the human skills, which I love that you've reframed it, where trainings were very, very rare. And they were always kind of considered a luxury. We don't have time for this. We don't have the budget for that. And every person in the organization, whether they are the juniors, the fresh graduates, the seniors, the leaders of the organization, need that kind of support, because you can be in your role and you could be doing an amazing job. And by the way, I mean, kind of accordingly, you get a promotion, but suddenly you're not just doing your job. You're responsible for 5 people or 50 people. And you're stuck. And I think we were talking about this earlier. It's like, how do you support people to take on these roles? And it's not just technical anymore. You have to ensure everyone brings out the best in them.
Totally true. And I sometimes call those our accidental managers and leaders. So people who are promoted based on their kind of technical competence and success in that technical role. And then suddenly they find themselves in that people role thinking, well, hold on a second, how do I navigate this? What does this look like? I don't know how to engage or motivate a team. I don't know how to, really ensure that innovation is happening, because for me, innovation and change, you often do need cash to do those things, but not always. Actually, you need behaviors, so I think that's a big part of how people do move into the workplace. They're not necessarily geared up, because we're not taught this stuff in school, right?
No,
we're not
definitely not. No.
We're not even taught this stuff if we're higher educated into university. So suddenly we have these swathes of people entering the workplace with no idea how to communicate effectively across multiple teams, multiple countries, with people who don't necessarily know how to give great feedback and, how to give feedback that feels a bit awkward and uncomfortable, right? That really nitty gritty stuff that helps us develop as human beings, the stuff that really makes a difference in the success of a project or a team or whatever the product or service is that you're delivering. And I think where we miss a trick, and I would kind of advocate for that, if anyone was, listening and thinking, okay, I'm building a team from scratch, or I've got a team and, where do I start with some of this? There's two things that I would always recommend doing with any team is coach those people to understand and develop the skill to give great feedback, and but also make sure that they know how to receive feedback as well. Because I think that can sometimes cause conflict in organizations, or it slows down productivity and efficiency, because we don't know how to have those great conversations and really give the feedback that is going to move things forward, that's going to get that momentum going. And then the second part is, I would teach those team members how to have difficult conversations. Because, I don't think anyone, whether it's in life or business, unfortunately, at some point, you're going to have some form of difficult conversation. And that's true. Whether you're a solopreneur with maybe a bunch of fantastic, talented freelancers that you're working with, or you're building a team in corporate, actually a difficult conversation, if you know how to navigate that in a way that you feel confident stepping into the conversation, how you're going to navigate that, the outcome that you're looking for and how you're going to support that person through the conversation, the whole dynamic changes. And I think we find then we've got teams and organizations that the culture is much more safe.
Yes.
People feel seen, they feel heard, they feel supported, but it's also really safe to fail and to experiment and to do all of that really exciting innovation that people really want to get into, but perhaps haven't, because they haven't felt safe to hold the hand up and say, well, I don't agree with that, or I think we should do it differently, or maybe
I'd like to try.
Yeah, I'd like to try. I mean, what a wonderful thing to give space for people to say, right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
No, I love that. I mean, okay, so a lot of what you're saying brings back as well some of the things that Simon Sinek advocates for, especially that safe space at the workplace for leaders to step back and say, okay, try, encourage that. But also something else that came to my mind, looking at the human element and the part you were saying about the difficult conversations. Usually you are promoted from your team, which means these are your friends and your buddies. These are the people you went to their birthday parties and you had a drink with and stuff. And now you're their boss. Now you're supposed to to give feedback to, and to ensure that how can you manage that when it comes to the human part of it? I don't want to say detaching your friendship from the work, because I don't believe in that. I feel we should it's always personal. At the end of the day, it's humans working with humans to serve humans. But how is this something that could be managed within the workplace?
Do you know, I think if we all start and go and walk into and lean into any conversation from a place of compassion, first and foremost, I think whatever conversation you then need to have with that person, the kind of armor that we all have as human beings to protect ourselves, when someone when you know that someone's coming to that conversation with compassion, and you trust that person, and you've spent that time where they've built that trust in you as a leader, I think people are more open to the conversation. But I think the other thing is there's no harm in sharing that it feels uncomfortable to you. I think it's absolutely fine to say, I need to have a conversation with you, and it's a conversation that I feel uncomfortable about, and being really open with that. And yes, some people may want to go in a bit of detail there. I don't even think you need to. I think it's okay to just say, I need to have a difficult conversation or an uncomfortable conversation with you, but I really want us to work on this problem together and to find a way through together. That feels totally different to going into the conversation where there's maybe some conflict there, there's some distrust because at one point you were my friend, now you're my manager or leader. But just being really open with people often helps break down some of those initial barriers that we naturally have up, because it's just a human reaction, right?
Yes.
But I've definitely seen that work very well for people when you're just starting to step into those sorts of roles and conversations.
One of the things I've learned over the past few years is to embrace my vulnerability, because I realized it's a superpower.
Yes.
And I've been advised against it a lot by my close friends.
Me too.
That doesn't look good, and that doesn't show the confidence. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with being competent and technical and confident and vulnerable. It's okay, because I'm a human. I can say I feel uncomfortable about this. I got some tears when I had like a mega event where a lot of women were signing up, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy. They're like, you shouldn't be crying online. And I'm like, it's okay. It was a proud moment. But speaking of that, in touching on your own experience, that vulnerability as well, when it comes to, I don't want to call it failing, because I love reframing it as learning opportunities.
Yes.
But when you do miss the mark, when you do have to close a business because it's not doing well and stuff, talk about that. How can you embrace, your humanity and all the skills that go along with it in that moment?
I mean, I'd love to say that I got it nailed. I really didn't, absolutely at the beginning, and even in darker moments since, you feel like an utter failure. It doesn't matter what anyone else externally says to you. You can have gone through the most incredible coaching experiences of your life where you know about reframing, about your mindset and the work that you've done there. It's a completely natural human reaction to feel challenged in that situation. Your ego takes a huge kicking. There's no getting away from that. You have to completely kind of reimagine, really, who you are as an individual, to separate yourself that just because that organization failed does not mean you are a failure as a human being, as a person. And you absolutely still have the skills, the knowledge, the experience, all of those incredible things that you keep delivering to the world. You are still that person, just because the situation hasn't worked out the way that you wanted, the way that you planned. So I do think it takes time to process these things. I think, like any situation that we experience as human beings, I think there's a grieving process as well for what was and what could have been. And I think you have to find a way to let yourself feel all of those feelings while being able to move forward and still create impact, and think about, what your core purpose was, and keep getting back to alignment to that, because there will be other ways other opportunities, other experiments, other businesses, whatever you decide in life, there will be other ways to still live out your purpose, you'll build your legacy, have an impact. But it's going to take a bit of reframing. It's going to take, perhaps a pivot and a change of direction, or it might really just take you reflecting on who you are as a human being and how you do want to show up in the world as well. But it's not easy, Hanan. It's not easy. And people around you, every situation's unique, right? So you'll get lots of advice, lots of, lawyers involved and all the various other expensive things. That's one thing I've learned. It's very expensive to close a business.
Which takes another hit to your ego as well.
Which is insane when you're closing because, well, there's a whole backstory, which I'll tell you on a different day because we haven't got time for it. But when you're closing because there's some very large invoices that haven't been paid by people who owe you money, you don't have the cash to then, and it's expensive to close a business, which seems completely insane to me. But that's a whole other conversation. But I think getting back to the human side of it, I think you've got to get clear and go through a bit of a healing journey as well. Like, I'm not ashamed to say that, I've had therapy and other support, not just on this topic, but it really did help me to really think about how I wanted to navigate this, and getting to choose how you experience everything that you go through as a human, I think is an incredible privilege. So, choosing how you want to be able to navigate that. And again, in the first weeks, that honestly didn't even enter my brain. It was just, what do you need to get done? How do you support the team through it? How do you do the various steps in the process? But once you start to navigate through that, I did a lot of, getting my phone and recording myself, but like talking to myself about how I was feeling and journaling and really making myself face the really horrible,
the reality that you're going through.
And also, you in that process, in any challenge I think we face in life, it does mean you have to face the parts of yourself that you don't like as well, and do something about it, right? So a lot less ego these days, and a lot more really getting back to purpose, impact, and what I want that to look like next for me.
From your experience in 16 plus years in learning and development, I'm curious, have you seen certain technical competences associated with certain human skills? Like, have you found, like, for example, engineering company, they have a lot more of one of the elements of the human skills that you would train for?
Interestingly, let me think about this. So I think there's certain, I don't believe, for example, I try not to swear, so it really annoys me.
You can swear, it's an adult show.
The rhetoric around, for example, developers in a very highly technical environment being dreadful at communication and speaking to people.
And introverts and stuff.
That whole rhetoric, I think, is incredibly damaging. I think it puts us all into this one-size-fits-all box, and it doesn't create any space for nuance. And I think where I've seen that play out is then organizations are not investing the time and energy on supporting those people to then develop the human skills to be truly successful in that role, because it's almost like a default, they're the tech team and they're our developers, and they just want to sit in a darkened room with their headphones on.
Do code.
It's utter nonsense, right? And I think it's damaging, for people who then want to, maybe move out of that sort of role and explore other careers or progress in that career, or even if they don't, they just want to stay doing what they're doing. Because fundamentally, if you're in a development role, your role has such a knock-on effect with every other person in the team, with the growth of the organization, with whatever impact they're wanting to have with the products that they're designing and developing. So actually, those people need to be your best communicators in the organization.
They're translating your vision into code.
I know, right? Like, it seems so obvious, but I think it's something that I do see that disconnect and the lack of investment in those people to develop those skills is really disappointing. And it's only rarely that I've seen organizations do that well. But when they do, the change and the impact on that team is phenomenal, hugely high performing, productivity, efficiency, deadline management, engagement with your product managers, engagement with your client-facing people, all of that great stuff suddenly just becomes much more easier, much more smoother, and much more impactful as well. But there's a lack of investment, I think, in human skills generally across the board, which I would love to see happen more often, because these skills we can develop them. It's not just a personality thing. It's not you're either born with it, you're not, all of that nonsense. This stuff can be coached, developed, taught. I've seen it happen, and I've seen it happen really successfully.
I love when you were talking about the development of people within the organization, especially from department to department or promotion and stuff. I always remember that organizations tend to say, go for an MBA, we'll fund it. And I'm like, the MBA is not the solution. It is not a solution for all. It gives you a wider, being an MBA holder myself, it gives you a wider outlook on the different functionalities of the business, but you don't get the human skills from it. You don't get to evolve as a leader from it. You're just getting some further technical competences or understanding. It's not even, it develops the whole competence across the organization. And that brings me back to what we originally spoke about, which is why I wanted to have this conversation with you. When you were talking about democratizing human skills in the workplace, how is it that, what like the work that you're doing and the impact it is, but also looking at, as you were saying, whether different functions within the organization, whether different educational opportunities, how do we democratize this?
Yeah, so I guess this goes way back to my frustration in my own career when I was on a graduate program, and I was doing very well on that graduate program. I was, in a quite a challenging environment, very male dominated. And I was kind of the second high performer in our team and in our organization. And I was still on the grad scheme, which was incredible, right? So at quarterly reviews, we'd have all these great celebrations of what people were doing. But I found myself getting deeply frustrated because I kept saying to them, like, I want more. Like, can I progress now? Can I learn other stuff? And there was nowhere for you to go. There was you kind of finished the grad program and you fell off a bit of a cliff in terms of your opportunity to go through any further development until you were at a certain level within the organization, where you were director or, higher up in terms of like a partner type role, leading a team, all of that great stuff. But there was a huge gap between there and where I was. And so you kind of felt like you were waiting for people to retire, for spaces to open up.
Fill up the slots.
Yeah. And so guess what? I moved on from that organization. And what it really taught me, and what I kept coming back to with all of the organizations that we work with, we've worked with global corporates right down to your startups, SMEs, is, we spend so much time, focused in L&D on your high potentials, your high performers, you get to a certain level in the organization, and then you can go on a leadership program. And it's like, hold on a second. all of this stuff, this human skills stuff, this how you show up, from a self-leadership perspective, never mind when you're leading a team, people need this way, way, way before they even get near a team and lead them. That's where kind of toxic cultures or quite damaging behaviors can happen, because we're not taught or supported to learn this stuff in schools, in the workplace, and other places. So for me, when I talk about democratizing learning, what I mean is that we should be making this stuff accessible to everyone at every level within an organization. And actually, we should be looking at how it's then funded and shared across communities and community groups as well, because whether you're in the not-for-profit sector, a private company, a community group, actually these fundamental human skills stuff like empathy, like great communication skills, like being able to show vulnerability but with boundaries, having the difficult conversations, feedback, all of this great stuff. Don't we want every human to know how to do this and to do this well? This is so fundamental to every aspect of our life, not just our careers, not just the workplace, but our everyday behaviors and actions as well.
Problem solving, design thinking, these are all things that, reflecting now, because as you said, I didn't get that support, and I went out and started exploring for myself and enriching myself with these experiences. They've made a hell of a difference in my personal life, let alone, how I carry myself in the professional world.
So true. And I do think, organizations, especially in the kind of startup world and scaling, it's all about innovation. It's all about problem solving. But we forget sometimes that, I've seen programs where they're teaching innovation, which is incredible, right? Yes, 100% we need that. But I do think there's still a gap where innovation without human skills will only get you so far, because how are those people who are innovating, as it were, how are they communicating with each other? How are they sharing their ideas? How are they developing those ideas as far as they possibly could go through really great feedback loops and development and all of that good stuff? So I think it's about bringing all of those, like the digital and the tech, really great stuff, closer to the human skills bit, so that we can really drive forward in any organization, in any economy, greater productivity, greater efficiency, but doing it in a way that feels good. If you're part of it, if you're one of those humans that are part of those teams, you do feel seen, you do feel heard, you feel supported, and therefore you can show up and do your best work.
Yep. And I love that, talking about startups, I work with a lot of startups, I've mentored hundreds. And one of the things that is pushed at startup leaders mostly is you got to be great at public speaking. You got to be great at pitching. But in essence, the umbrella is actually communication, as you were saying. You can't communicate with whether they're freelancers or your co-founders or your technical team or your marketing team, or with investors for fundraising, and being able to stand on a stage and communicate what your vision is, what the solution you're trying, whose pain are you resolving for, what solution are you creating for. That's part of the human skills. It's not a course that you go to is like a perfect pitch and then you get a few slides and this is what you're supposed to do. And people freak out about it, and I don't think they still know where to go for that.
Yeah. Come talk to me.
Now we know.
Now we know. I think it's so true. And there's actually a program that I'm working on at the moment in collaboration with a couple of people, because we definitely recognize that exact problem. There's so much focus on public speaking as a skill. Quite rightly, I think that's a fantastic skill to have, 100%.
Because there are a lot of opportunities as well and stages now that are available for pitching competitions and all of this. So that definitely is a good skill to have.
It's a great skill. But I think there's also a lot of people that really want to elevate their voice and find their voice with their team, in the boardroom, in other contexts that might not first appear, because I think public speaking, we kind of immediately go to, you're on a stage, you're pitching, as you say, or you're doing a keynote, or you're on a panel, and that absolutely has its place, but it's a different form of communication. And I think it's a it's a form of communication that actually people can get comfortable with much quicker when we're talking about it in the context of, you know, how do you want to show up as a leader in your organization, not in the style of any other leader out there in the world, in the style of you, that's authentic to you, that feels good to you. And supporting people to really understand what that form of communication looks like for them.
That's
because
true.
if you get comfortable there, I don't have any proven research on this, but
I agree with what you're about to say.
I would guarantee the pitching, the public speaking, the being on panels, the doing keynotes suddenly doesn't feel anywhere near as scary or daunting as it did, because actually you are communicating well, confidently, feeling good every single day. And so you're
internally, with your main stakeholders. At the end of the day, these are your stakeholders. I mean, you've still got your customers, you've got the external stakeholders, but internally, these are the people, as you said, you're working with every day. You're working together towards realizing that vision for the business every day. And if you can communicate with them, it is a lot easier to be able to tell everyone outside, now, what are you doing and what are you working on?
Yeah. And I've seen some founders literally default that role to other people in their organization, you know, and I don't think that is the answer either, because if you're the person who, or part of the team who has come up with this idea, who found the problem, the thing that's been really bugging you that you want to fix in the world, people need to hear that story, because that's how they're going to connect with you on a human level, to then want to be able to work with you on a client basis, to invest in you, to engage with you in whatever context that looks like. So I do think it's really fundamental that people explore what that looks like for them. Not everyone wants to be on stage. That's cool. But that's okay. That's absolutely fine. But I think any contributor in the workplace, we have a responsibility to create that safe space for the people that we're engaging with. And one of the ways that you do that is through great communication.
Speaking of communication and stages, I can't not ask you about your role as TEDx organizer and curator before we wrap up. So tell us a bit more about the vision of why you decided to take on the role of curating Teesside, TEDx Teesside.
So I got involved with TED a couple of years ago, and I met an incredible group of different and brilliant people in the US from going to the proper TED conferences. And what I realized in going to these conferences, incredible experience, amazing people that I got to connect with, learned a huge amount, and actually some of the most interesting conversations were like in the coffee queue waiting to go into the TED Talks. So just great bunch of humans. But what I realized as well was what a privilege that I had to be in that situation, that I could afford to be there, that I got through the application process to get a ticket and all of those great things. And I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to bring some of this magic back to my community in my hometown in Teesside. So I kind of set off on a bit of a mission to think what that could look like. Went through the application process to secure the license. So I have the license for TEDx in Teesside in the northeast of England. And so far we've explored TEDxWomen as our kind of brand of the different events. We are exploring others like TEDx Youth and a TEDx Standard event as well. But I started with TEDxTeessideWomen because unfortunately, 2 of the towns in Teesside have been named the worst places to be born a girl in the UK. And as being a woman born in Middlesbrough, deeply frustrating, because yes, we have challenges, yes, we have problems there, but there's also an incredible amount of great work going on in the town as well. And I felt like there was this quite big disparity, because in the same breath, years later, Middlesbrough's been named the fastest growing tech town outside of London. And it's like, how can we have such extreme experiences of people in one small location in the northeast of England? So our mission is to elevate voices, to get people comfortable and on stage who perhaps haven't always had their voices heard. They've got a great idea to share. They want to get it out into the world. And I think TEDx is a great way to do that, because not only do you engage with the audience live in the room, you then have this wonderful platform of global audience. And you literally do not know where that ripple effect of impact's going to go. And I think that's really, really magical thing for people to be part of.
I love that. My intention I'm putting it out in the universe for 2025 is to become a TEDx speaker, because I think I've put it off for too long, and I'm like, now's the time. Now's the time.
I love that for you. I really love that for you. That's really cool.
Thank you so much, Michaela. This has been so enriching. And I know I said 30 minutes and we're over and above the 30 minutes, but I need to ask you the last question to wrap.
Okay, go for it.
I ask everyone.
Oh,
so Empowered to Grow is the name of the podcast.
Yes.
How does this phrase resonate with you personally?
Ooh, empowered to grow. I think for me, it's about taking all those different parts of yourself, the ugly stuff, the stuff you don't really like, the stuff that you love, the things that you can have impact in the world. And really, when you get truly empowered to grow, you take all of those little nuances of who you are as a human being. You are really intentional and conscious in how you show up in the world to then deliver your mission, to serve the people you're here to serve. And that for me is empowered growth. But you've got to do that nitty gritty hard work to uncover all of those things. And you've got to really spend the time developing and empowering yourself so that you can hit that kind of growth that you would love to experience, whether that's in life or business.
I love that. Thank you, Michaela, for being here, for sharing all your wisdom with us. And thank you for the mission you're on for democratizing human skills in the workplace and in life generally.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. It's been a real honor. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And for everyone watching, if you're a business leader, human skills is your responsibility, and supporting and democratizing the human skills within your workplace. If you are in the workplace, well, demand that you get the human skills that you deserve. And if not, advocate for yourself. Go out and find the resources to be able to support yourself, to become a better communicator, to become a better strategist in life, to have all the arsenal of skills that are going to serve you across every platform that you're in. As always, thank you for being here. I wish you love, abundance, and prosperity, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Empowered to Grow podcast. I'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, know that empowered you empowers others. Love, abundance, and prosperity to you all.